What's up, everybody? Axe Wizard here, working on my game some more. Let's just jump into what I've got. So, boom. So I added that little cool zoom feature. I saw that from a fellow YouTuber's last video that I kind of liked. I'll get into that in just a second. But you can see I've got a rough working UI on the right here. You can see I've got my shields and my health. And then when I select a target, you can see some details about that target on the left panel here. So this is a super rough UI. It's obviously not going to be the final product. I think I might change almost everything about it. But the cool thing is I've got the pieces in place to kind of do that. So I also somehow introduced a bug with AI, so that's cool. I added the ability to initiate combat with someone who I have targeted. And so if I just keep zooming around this guy, you can see that his shields are going down. You can see my shields actually went down. So if I just keep zipping around this guy, eventually I'll get to where like I'll get behind him, and then the AI just kind of freezes and doesn't know what to do. Yeah, it just stops. And I have to move away out of its attack range, and then the intercept AI will kick in, and it still won't even face me. So I think that my calculation there needs work, but I don't know what I did to break it. So that's super fun. So I could just sit here and shoot him, but once I like fly in front of him, it sort of like resets, and then you're able to do stuff again. So that's kind of fun. But yeah, so I'm able to fight ships and stuff now. So cool. Yeah, that's about it. Small little update, but that's what I was able to accomplish. I spent a lot of time figuring out how I wanted to handle the actual selection. Like, I implemented that last episode, but I didn't quite know how to use it. So I had to do some research and practice with some signals. I feel a bit better with signals, and I think the way I'm doing this UI is probably not the way it needs to be done. See there, it's derping out again. Now it's going to be on to me. There we go. So I got to figure that out too. But hey, bugs happen, so we will get that cleaned up. But yeah, so now that I got the info there, I can click on different ships. I can right-click something, or I can hit escape to clear targets. I do want to add something that will, if you don't have anything targeted, it'll just target the nearest enemy. I think that would be cool. Oh, I just flew face first into 2 missiles. That was dope. But yeah, so anyway, that's what I've got. Yeah, so that little camera zoom effect, I got that idea from, there's another YouTube channel called 2D Space Adventure Game, and this guy is really awesome. He's been kind of following my series pretty much since I started it. Like, I think like by the time I posted like episode 2, he was already commenting and stuff like that. So, and he's been giving me like valuable feedback and stuff throughout the entire way, and his journey has been really awesome too, because he started out his first like devlog, his first few ones, he was writing this game in like just pure JavaScript. So it was kind of cool to see how he's doing that without a game engine. And then by devlog 4, he picked up using the Godot engine, just like I'm doing. And he was actually one of the big factors of why I decided to stop using GameMaker in the middle of my game development and just port everything over to the Godot engine and then start working in that. So initially I was just going to do this whole game inside of GameMaker, and then the next game I was going to make start to finish was going to be using Godot. But, you know, by the time I got to doing UI in GameMaker, it was just this horrible memory that I always blocked out and I just always forgot about. So when I started on working on UI in GameMaker, I was like, this is awful. I don't want to do this. So I would rather port my whole progress to a brand new engine that I'm not really that familiar with. And I did that. So I've been learning Godot ever since, and he's been learning Godot as well. And it's really cool to follow his progress because he started out, you know, doing some basic sprites, and then he's been making his own art, and I really like his art style. And it's really cool to see all the cool little effects that he has. But yeah, so really cool to see his progress. So if you like my devlogs, definitely go check his out because they're also really entertaining as well. And yeah, so just give a shout out there. Good stuff. So what have I done since last episode? So I added the ability to clear the selected ship either by right clicking or escape. And I also added the ability to fire on selected ships. So let's talk about how I accomplished that. So if I look at my mouse area 2D, this is I got so much stuff open, man. In other scenes down here, I have mouse area 2D, which is just it's a area 2D with a collision shape. I made the collision shape a little bit bigger to have a radius of 5. That way, like, I don't have to be as precision perfect when clicking on a ship. I might even crank that up to like 10 because sometimes like it's really hard to click those little tiny ships. But yeah, so I did that, and then in the script where I was doing the unhandled input before, all I did to clear this selected was add this code block here, and I'm just simply checking for these two actions, escape or right click, which I added to my input map. In project settings, input map, I just added those down here. So right click and escape. So we're just checking if those are, if either of those are true. If they are, we're just clearing our selected target. And then I started using signals, and I think I need to rewrite all of my code because now I have a better grasp on how signals work. And I realize that I've been doing things in a game maker way, which is not very efficient. I need to do things in a Godot way, which is using signals. That way this will really become apparent when I get into how I'm doing my UI. So yeah, stay tuned for that. But I'm emitting a signal, which I am declaring. If we scroll back over here, up here, I create a signal called update selected. And what I'm doing is on main, when I create my mouse selector, this area 2D scene, I instance it, I add it to as a child, and I also connect that signal to myself and this update selected function that I made down here. And all this is doing is this is just updating the selected in my variable here. So I have a variable called selected, which I just have initialized to null. And then I also update the player selected. So this is kind of messy because you've got like 3 different variables. And so you really have to be careful of where's your point of truth. So the way I'm treating it is that the point of truth is basically main. Like whatever main has, that should be what it is. Now, where does main get that from? It gets it from the mouse area 2D. So technically the mouse area 2D is the point of truth, because that's where everything comes from. But yeah, not the most ideal way. I've got it cobbled together. I think I can clean it up probably. It's been a few late nights working on this after hours, and it's just been like it's been a pretty tiring process, but I'm working through it. So once we have the selected, we're just updating that selected. Now, what is that doing? So main is using this so I can pass that to the UI element. So that whole left panel is showing the details about whatever is selected. And then I'm using this for the player so that I can pass that down to my fire weapon function. And I'll show you how I did that. So let's get into ship. So let's see. Let's go to fire weapons here. Yeah. Okay. So this is an unintentional bug. But so what I'm doing here is I added this to the fire weapons. So before I just had this where I was, for all my weapons, I was calling fire weapon, which allowed me to specify what type of weapon we're firing. And it also allowed me to supply in my ship's current velocity. That way my my fired projectile could also take that into account. And then I was passing in my enemies array before. And then I also recently modified it to allow to pass in what sound player to use when the weapon fires. So what I did is I just copied this enemies array to be a local variable here. I just duplicated it. And then what I'm doing is, do we have anything selected? If we do have something selected, I'm adding it to my temporary enemies array here. I don't want to add it to my enemies like permanently. I just want to add it for now. Now, why this is a bug is because I should make this player only. If we are the player. This is why comments are important. So if player, actually, you know what? We'll just do if player, and then what we'll do is we'll just implement that. So we'll just indent that. So that way we're only adding that target if we are the player, because the player is only worried about what is actually selected. So that's all we're doing there. So that's how I was doing that before. So I'm passing in the enemies list and the fire weapon. When it fires the projectile, it includes that enemies list in the projectile. And then when the projectile collides with a ship, it's checking if it's on the enemy list. So and then what I'm doing to make the ship fight back is I modified the take damage function to add this check here. I modified take damage to include a attacker argument or parameter, which is of type ship. And I'm just saying, hey, is the instance valid attacker? If it is, then we're going to add ship to our enemies, and then we're also going to ensure that we are in the enemy's enemy list. So we're just making sure that, you know, we're already there. So this, I need to find a cleaner way of doing this, because this, I think, has a bit of overhead, because every time a projectile collides with a ship, it's having to check like 2 arrays and potentially mutate 2 arrays if they're not done. And that's every time a projectile hits. So it's a pretty like nothing cost right now in this proof of concept phase, but later on when we go to optimize, this is going to have to be cleaner. So I'll need to figure that out later. But so yeah, that's all I did there. Everything else is the same as it was before. So I just added that to take damage. And that's how I was able to implement able to fire on selected ships. So that's how I did that. The added intro zoom effect, that one's super quick. I can show that one. If we go to other scenes and we go to my zoom camera, what I'm doing here is on the ready, I'm setting my zoom duration to 1, which is 1 second. And I'm setting my zoom level to be 1. And the reason why I'm doing that is because I have the, if you go to the scene, max zoom, wait, no, where is it? Current zoom, here we go. So I have zoom set to 2. So I have it set so it's zoomed all the way out. And then when it starts, I have it zoom in down to 1. I thought that was a pretty cool effect when you start the game. I thought that's just a pretty nice little touch. So I liked that. I added that in. Seems to work okay. There is a little bit of a bug though. Like if you start it and then like try to zoom immediately, it goes kind of wonky. I guess it's not bad. I guess it does what it's supposed to. But yeah. So that wasn't too bad at all to do. And then of course I got the extremely basic UI working. So let's talk about the UI and the mess I've made of things. So for my UI, if we go down here, I have right side panel and I have left side panel. So let's talk about left side panel because that's what I've done most of the work on. So if we pop this open in the scene editor here, you can see I've got like the sprite of the ship that we're targeting. I got like some description. I got some stuff here. And then what's happening with this, if we go to the script, this is where it gets kind of messy. So first, I'm also tracking the selected as a variable on the left panel. So again, we have a fourth place where we're tracking the selected, but it's we're using we're actually getting the main node, and then what we're doing is we're getting the once we have the main node, we're getting that mouse selector, which is a child of the main node. And this is a kind of messy way of doing it. I feel like there's probably a better way. I just don't know it yet. But in my ready function, I'm just getting the main node mouse selector, which is the variable that I store that in. So if we go to main, you can see I've got mouse selector, which is an area 2D. So left panel is getting this from main, and this is what's actually doing the selecting stuff. So that's what I'm doing there. So let's go back to left panel. And then what I'm doing is I'm connecting that, I'm verifying that instance is valid, and then I am connecting the signal that emits to my own update selected function here, which is just doing the same thing it was doing earlier. Selected equals new selected. So nothing too fancy there. Now, once we have that selected, I'm also tracking all these nodes that we need to get. So I have the target data container, which is, if you look right here, this is a VBox container right here. And this just has all the details about the target. And so the reason why I'm getting that is so I can set that to be invisible if I don't have a target. And then I have the texture reticle or rectangle, not reticle, rectangle, which is basically the sprite that's being shown. I have the description label, which shows like what type of ship it is. I have the shields label, which shows, you know, how much shields you have. I have a progress bar, which gives you like the health bar, and a label and progress bar for the hit points. And then I have a label to show like how many weapons you detect on that ship. So then I have a function called update UI data that I am calling every step in the process event, basically. And I don't think I even need to pass in delta anymore. That was something I was working on that wasn't quite working before, so I can get rid of that. There we go. So we're just checking, hey, do we have a valid instance for selected? If we don't, then we're setting the visible attribute for the target data container to be false. That way it's hidden. If we do, then we're just moving on through and we're just updating all of our UI elements to currently match what our selected target has. Now this is how it was done like in GameMaker. And so, you know, this is updating all this stuff like roughly 60 times a second or 120 times, whatever your game speed's at, whatever frames you've got going on. Now Godot wants you to use signals because rather than having to constantly pull this data, you can just emit a signal whenever this data changes, and then you could update only the stuff you need when that data changes. So I already need to refactor this to take advantage of signals. Now that I know how to emit signals and how to connect those signals to functions, this can be cleaned up a lot to where it's not as constantly resource intensive. So I did it this way because this is how GameMaker functioned, and it's doable this way, but Godot has a better way that's better in the long run. Because rather than updating all of this stuff, you know, say 60 times a second, you might only have to update it maybe once per minute or something like that, depending on if you get hit with a stray bullet and you're flying around dodging stuff. Maybe you're not taking damage every frame, so you don't need to update your labels and your progress bar. You don't need to do this whole calculation and stuff every time you do that. So pretty cool stuff there. Now this code is also pretty messy, I think, as well, because like I'm doing I'm doing some calculations. So for example, when I'm setting up my text for my shields label, I want it to be like the shields with a colon, and then it has like the current value with a slash, and then the max value. So how I'm calculating that is, first of all, I'm casting it to a string, and then I'm rounding it, and then I'm just getting what the current selected shields value is. And then I'm doing the same thing. I'm rounding it and all this stuff. And then for the progress bar, which is the health bar, I'm doing a percentage calculation. So that's just the current value divided by the maximum times 100. And I'm also rounding that. That way it doesn't give you something like 93.85974.309, which it was doing, and it was pretty weird. And I'm just setting the progress bar value attribute to just be that percentage that I calculated. So rather than having to do these calculations every frame, I can only do I should be able to do these calculations only when they change. So that's going to be something I'm going to have to refactor. But I've got it working for now. It's not pretty, but it works. I spent quite a bit of time just kind of fighting with getting the layout and stuff to work. Especially getting this this texture rectangle to work the way I want it to, because what was happening is this expand attribute over here, it's kind of silly. Once you hit expand, it basically made it disappear. It doesn't expand, it like shrinks. And the reason being is because it doesn't have a minimum size. Well, I want the minimum size to be like dynamic. Like I don't necessarily want a minimum size. I want a maximum size. I want you to expand to, you know, fill whatever. And the stretch mode here gives me a few options. Like I can scale it, I can tile it, which I was doing for my circuitry and my metal textures here. But I wanted to like keep it centered. So what I wanted was, if I have a super small ship like this, it just keeps the same sprite size for the small ship and just puts it like right in the center. But if I have a super big ship that, you know, takes up the whole square, that's fine as long as it stays within that square. What was happening is that when I targeted one of the big ships, it was actually going out of the bounds, and it was expanding everything else. So yeah, apparently in Godot 4 this is renamed to like ignore texture size or something like that, which makes sense because it doesn't seem to expand when you hit expand, which is one of the most annoying things that like everybody asks questions about when you're looking at Godot 3 stuff. So I don't know, but that's how I've got it working right now. So I'm pretty happy with like how it functions as far as just, you know, the actual function of it. So you can clearly see the stuff here. I might make the text a little bit bigger. I also started playing around with themes, which was a kind of a fun journey. Oh, I just pissed that guy off. Bring it, fatty. Piece of me. You can't even rotate fast enough to hit me. Yeah, so when I was clicking on this ship, this whole sprite here was like pushing everything else out, and it was making this whole bar like out to here, super wide. So, oh, I just ate a missile right in the face. That was cool. So let's talk about the theme real quick here. So I started out, I have a themes section in my UI folder down here, and I just created like HUD theme. I didn't know what to name it. So if you click on this, you can see it has this cool theme that you can add, and you can modify this sort of stuff. It's kind of complicated how it works, but so far all I've done for the theme really is I did the font. So if we look at my theme up here, I can change the default font. So if I go up to my fonts, so I already had the X02 variable font TTF added. Now what I had to do is I had to create a dynamic font resource. So what I did is I had to right click my fonts, I had to go to new resource, and I had to type in the actual kind of resource I wanted to add, which in this case was font. And that was also how I created the themes. I had to go create a new resource and then search for theme and create a theme resource. which is something I would have never known if I didn't look up a YouTube video on how themes work. So now that I have a good idea of how themes work, basically what you can do is you can go and you can add as many types as you want, and then you can change, you can basically override all the stuff you want for whatever control you're adding. So if you go here, you can basically add your own theme overrides for all of this stuff here. So if I want my progress bar to be a certain way, if I want my button to have a certain like rounded edges, or maybe, you know, anything that you can change, anything to do with the UI, you can change in your theme. So now that I know how the basics of doing that, I think probably I need to spend some time and actually go through and define what my design theme needs to be for this whole game, and just make that work. And the cool thing is, the cool thing about how the theme works is that I can just go to my parent, like the owner of this scene here, and I can go down here to theme, which my head is in the way. Let me get me out of the way here. There you go. So you can see over here in theme, we have a theme here. Duh, obviously. But if I wanted to go add it to like something else that doesn't use it, all I have to do is, if there's no theme loaded, I just click and drag this bad boy over here and just, not there, hang on. Boom, there you go. So I click and drag it over here in theme, drop it in, and it propagates throughout all the children, because the every child will basically inherit from the theme. So really cool stuff. I like that. So it feels like it's kind of got a steep learning curve when you learn how to set up your theme, but once you get your theme going, it's super easy to just apply it to everything, which is fantastic. And the other benefit of that is if you change your theme, it propagates throughout everything you're using your theme on. So if you are using your theme for all of your UI stuff and you change your theme, then you can quickly change your UI in one spot, as opposed to going into each individual thing, which I'm going to have to do, because if we go to my title screen, if you look at all these like buttons and stuff here, I'm actually going through and in theme overrides, and I am like creating a new dynamic font, and I'm setting the sizes, I'm setting it to use the filter, and then just all this stuff for each of these buttons. And I didn't need to do this. I could have just made one theme for my title screen and then set that on my parent node here, on my root node for this scene, and it would have just propagated through, and it would have been great. But I didn't do that. I set theme overrides for every single individual button, because that's the only way I could get it to work at the time. So I've already got some technical debt that I've accrued there. So yeah, fun stuff. Let's see, move me back over here. But yeah, that's a smaller update, but that's what I've been able to accomplish so far. And, you know, progress is moving right along. I haven't gotten to work on it as much as I want to, but it's been going pretty good. So I talked about all this stuff here. So let's see, what things do I have next on this? So I want to finish the rest of the right panel UI. So there's, if we run the game, there's really not much going on there. It's just like shields and health, like hull integrity. I want to add like some more details and stuff there, but I also want to make sure it's laid out properly, and I'm kind of working with that. I still haven't fixed my mini map. You can see it's still using the same kind of ugly background, and it's got the markers that don't. I still haven't updated the markers, so still working on that. I also want to allow zoom on the mini map. I haven't got that done yet. I have to fix that AI rotation bug that I somehow introduced between now and the last episode. And I also want to tweak it so I can't initiate combat with someone of your faction. So right now, if you look, basically all the guys, yeah, that was see how it derped out there on the zoom. I messed with the zoom too soon, so I got to fix that too. But most of the guys on the left side here are part of my faction. Now, I don't have faction listed in the detail pane here. That's something that's going to be added later. But I shouldn't be able to just walk up and shoot a member of my own faction. Like, I want the bullets to just ignore it. And so I'll have to tweak that. So I've got that added in there. So those are the top things on my list right now of what I want to do. But now that I've got some rough working UI, I need to also work on my theme some more. So I need to get that working better. I need to create a theme for title screen. I just bumped my microphone, I'm sorry. And then I also want to start adding in, I want to add in like planets. So I want to add a planet there. And then once I have planets, add planets, space stations, etc. Once I have those there, then I can start working more on the ship AI. So right now, when we run the game, they're just sitting there. They're not doing anything, right? I want to have them to have some life to them. So maybe they'll, you know, my thought process for this is just how they were doing it in Escape Velocity Nova, which is realistically like the perfect solution they had. Is like sometimes a ship would just fly into a space system, and then they would kind of dock at a planet, and they'd be doing their own business for a bit, and then they would turn around and they'd be on their way, and then they would like hyperdrive out of the system, and that was cool. You always had ships coming and going, and then I could start working on, you know, adding in a bunch of cool events and stuff like that, like interacting with planets, and then also I can add other stuff in the system as well, such as like maybe there's like a derelict wreckage or something that you can search and find stuff, and just all sorts of different stuff. So once I get that going, I think the big blocker for me right now is I just need to get more familiar with the UI, because I really want to start getting into the whole dialogue system and start planning that out and start messing with that, because then that's going to add a lot of life to the game. But I just know if I started that right now, I would have to redo it all, because the way I'm doing UI right now, it's not the way to do it. So I just need to probably resolve that technical debt that I've accrued right now with this terrible setup. I need to refactor my code to use signals rather than constantly polling and updating every frame or every time the process function runs. I just need to do that stuff only when something changes. So that's another big thing I need to do. I need to refactor polling code to use signals. So that's going to be fun. So a lot of work to do with that stuff, a lot of like cleanup stuff. So there might not be any new features that might be added very soon, but I'm learning a lot. So, I mean, even just the way I'm doing UI right now, it's not optimal. It's not the way Godot wants me to do it, but it still lets me do it. And it's still 1,000 times better than trying to code UI in GameMaker, because that is absolute trash. So I'm pretty happy with it. I just have to learn the quirks of the various nodes. I'm starting to get more familiar with all the different control nodes. So yeah, it's pretty cool. I'm liking it. But anyway, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in whatever video I make next.